The following podcast is a little fiery but mostly peaceful. If you're an automaton, turn away now and shelter in place. If you're a Catholic ready to renew your prescriptions of red pills and white pills, stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Catholics Aren't Zombies. This is your host, Chris Munier. Thank you again for joining me. Noblesse Oblige is dead. Our elites hate our guts. What does Noblesse Oblige mean? Well, it's a French term and it means that the nobles are obligated. Who are they obligated to? Well, they're obligated to the poor, the lower rungs of society. They're supposed to have the best interest of the poor and the downtrodden at heart at all times, or at least in most of their endeavors. Not the way they are now, where they basically despise everything about the poor. You see, as St. John Chrysostom mentions, the rich exist for the poor exist for the sanctification of the rich. Unfortunately, this does not exist anymore. Our elites, not only do they not like us, but they hate us and despise everything about us. See, they don't find us as an annoyance, they don't think of us as an inconvenience, they despise us to the core. Our elites, public and private, they want to radically depopulate the world, and this is how we know that Noblesse Oblige is dead. And if we've been paying any attention, we would realize that these elites, well, they've been eugenicists from the beginning, at least for 150 years. How about the Bill Gates family? Bill and Melinda Gates? Well, we know they're pretty big supporters of the Planned Parenthood company, so we know how they feel about abortion. We can guess based on the exploits of Bill Gates' father, Bill Gates II, that makes Bill Gates the third, technically. We can extrapolate from his exploits that he was in league with the eugenicists because he was a member of the American Eugenics Society, and then he became a board member of Planned Parenthood. And then if that's not enough, we'll just look at all the Catholic politicians we have, Joe Biden, who just usurped the White House, Pelosi, Alexandria occasionally Castro. All of these folks are pro-abortion. They're members of the Democrats. Hopefully you saw my last video about how Democrats were never to be trusted. Now we know that even more so. These are the folks that comprise most of our elites. Not all, but most. That makes these folks not only compliant, but downright vicious and aggressive about the greatest genocide in the last 100 years, if not the greatest genocide ever. How many tens of millions have to die before we wake up and see this for what it is? Last year, there was about 1 million abortions. Despite the fact that everybody was social distancing, they didn't do a lot of social distancing. Still managed to have accidental babies that had to be aborted. It was the case that those million that died, those million babies, they outnumbered like the top 5 or 6 leading causes of death in America, maybe top 7. That's what our elites are up to right now. This isn't like Genghis Khan. This isn't even like Mao or Tito or Pol Pot or Hitler or Stalin or any of these nasty bastards or even Che Guevara. These folks are the most calculating and manipulative and evil folks ever because of what they stand for and because they're not only, they don't only turn a blind eye to it, but they outright endorse it. They actively engineer this stuff now. They start wars all the time. They're fomenting all this chaos with the Antifa, the BLM. They're completely aggressive and hostile to the nuclear family, and they've been for at least a couple decades now. They constantly try to overthrow regimes overseas. They've been doing that since at least World War II, FDR. And I know I mentioned quite a bit how bad the Democrats are, but then you got these Republican folks who, you think they're the counter elites that are going to help us out, save us. They're out for the little guy, I guess, perhaps. But it just turns out they're controlled opposition. Then you have what they're doing to us with our food and our medicine. All that's fake, poison designed to make us miserable and sick, even worse than we would already be. They turn our children into zombies and automatons. You send them to college and, within 4 years they come out looking like a half their head shaved, purple-haired Looney Tune that spouts Marxist propaganda wearing a Che Guevara t-shirt, completely ignorant of the fact that, hundreds of millions of people died from communism just in the last century, and all we want to do now is continue that. Yet people are completely ignorant of even basic rudimentary history. They couldn't tell you who the president was during World War II, or for that matter, who the first president was. Our elites have engineered this. This didn't happen by accident. This wasn't just, we got a little sloppy. Because we have gotten a little sloppy on things, to be sure. But this has got more to do with just downright active, aggressive evil. And the reason I use the zombie metaphor so much is because it's worse than being treated like children. At least with children, there's kind of an excuse. Let's say you're Hansel and Gretel running around in the forest, and then that wicked witch comes and gets you, tricks you. Next thing you know, you're boiling in a big cauldron. Well, okay, that's one thing. But we're adults. And when it happens to us, we're zombies. We become the living dead. We got infected by some kind of virus that mutates us and takes away most of our brain functioning. That's where we stand right now. It didn't have to be this way, but we made choices that led to this. And it comes from decades and decades of just doing what you're told, listening to the state on everything, listening to every authority figure, no matter whether the authority is legitimate or not, whether they have the grace of God or not, whether they even have the expertise to back up whatever the heck they're saying. We just listen to them anyway because, well, you know what, my authorities, my Romans 13, my Caesar, I'm just going to do whatever I'm told. You might remember the part in the gospel where our Lord Jesus Christ is teaching to our apostles they should not be afraid to ask our Heavenly Father for good things, for things that they believe they need. Because, what good father out there, when asked by their son for an egg, would hand them a scorpion? All right, there's that, which of course is valid. It's the inerrant word of God from the Holy Scriptures. But what is the practice right now from, let's say, our social and political leaders? Well, if they could be construed as fathers in any meaningful way, we got, they're most definitely handing us scorpions right now. As a matter of fact, you may as well be thrown into a coffin right now and have a big old pile of scorpions thrown all over you. You're consumed in scorpions. That's all they can do because they want to inflict harm on us. They don't have our interest at heart. There's definitely no Noblesse Oblige because it's the exact opposite. I don't know, what is it, Satanic Oblige? I don't know what the replacement would be, but it's the exact inverse. When it gets this bad and Noblesse Oblige is officially dead, you can probably look to France itself as the example of how ugly it would get. The French Revolution is what I have in mind. So again, right about the time, just a little after we had our revolution here in America, they had their version, and it didn't go too terribly well. Our version was pretty bloody, a lot of problems, a lot of conflict, very much resembled a guerrilla warfare in so many ways. But that's nothing compared to a society where the rich, the poor, everybody in between hates each other's guts, and they just go at it. One side's going to pull the guillotine on everybody. The other side's going to maybe burn folks at the stake, slit some throats, throw people in jail to be starved to death. This is what you get. When society gets this polar, this at each other's throats, it could be the ugliest thing you've ever seen. It could be just like 1994 Rwanda. The real polarization is not left versus right. It's not liberal versus conservative. We talk about terms that we never really define worth a crap anyway. But those aren't the terms that matter. You can throw all that into the septic tank. What really matters now is this elites versus normal people, nobles versus the plebeian. And guys, we've seen it before. It's a recipe for either a nasty revolution or a nasty civil war, years of genocide. We already got the abortion genocide. How much worse could this possibly get? It could be unprecedentedly worse. And let me be crystal clear on this. This is not just a government thing. This is not just a statism thing. As bad as that is, we're well used to that by now. This is every level of analysis. So you're talking about the government folks, the medical folks. How about in the last year? Whoa, boy. Our academic leaders, these professors, look at what they do to our kids. Even entertainers. I mean, there's a weird one right there. Our entertainers spend lots and lots of time haranguing us now. Ain't that something? People that you pay to, for example, go dribble a basketball and shoot it into a hoop like LeBron James, you can't get that guy to shut up. You can't get whoever the latest and greatest coked out lead singer for whatever stupid band to shut up about social justice. They get to lecture you all the time. Maybe in the old days, back in the 90s, maybe back then, it was okay, it was something to laugh at. But now it's legit and serious. Now their opinions, which should never have mattered because they're awful, are taken seriously. Whereas the rest of us, make way for being censored, make way for marginalization. And not only that, but if you argue too much, if you rebel in any way, shape, or form, we might just take your livelihood away from you. You won't be able to get a job anywhere. You get blacklisted off of everything imaginable. In the midst of all that, I'm pretty sure I don't want to hear from LeBron James. I don't want to hear from Beyonce. I don't want to hear from, I don't know, who is it? The guy from Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't even want to hear from Nancy Pelosi telling me, just suck it up and go eat ice cream. This is exactly why. It's that sort of reason why nobody likes these people. But it's worse than that. It's not just a grudge. It's not just, you put up with them because that's just how it always is. No, this is on the cusp of becoming a life or death. And if you don't believe me, all right, just stay tuned. See what not only the Biden administration ends up being, but see how everything looks going forward. I think you're going to be unpleasantly surprised if you haven't already taken the red pill back in 2020. Oh, wait, don't let me forget about the clergy. Oh, of course. This is, after all, Catholics aren't zombies, is the Catholic program. And any analysis of our rulers in the world would be remiss if I didn't say something about the clergy. Now, here are our spiritual leaders, shepherds, successors to the apostles, who, if we're honest about it, okay, for a while now, most of these guys probably entered into the seminary. They, quote-unquote, discerned their vocation just so they didn't have to work what they would consider to be a real job. Now, laying aside the fact that the priesthood is more than a real job, it's an incredibly difficult, noble, and divine calling. What an honor that would be to be called to that legitimately. But they don't view it that way. It's so obvious. It's abundantly clear. How do you know that? Well, look at the way they've been the last year or so with the viranoia. Are they really doing a whole lot to help anybody on a pastoral level? Even though that's, of course, one of their favorite words, pastoralism. Have they been doing any of that? No, they decided to run and hide. They're too scared. They can't even get out there and give the last rites or hear confessions from the dying. Forget about those of us, Joe Blow, pretty healthy, probably can suffer through it, and we'll be all right. We'll get back with you in a year or two. No, they can't even help the dying. These are people who, if they're not administered the sacraments and they're in the state of mortal sin, well, guess what happens? All right, outside divine intervention, extraordinary grace, they're condemned for all eternity. In other words, the sacraments, the last rites in particular, are life and death for people. But our elites, these clergy, who, when it's convenient for them, they'll invoke the magisterial hat and boss everybody around and gaslight you, power trip on you, that sort of thing. But when it comes to something that we need, that they're actually charged with administering, well, they're nowhere to be found. Because they're not only cowards, they hate our guts. Just like the rest of the nobles, just like the rest of the elites. Noblesse Oblige is dead, and the elites hate our guts. Well, one more group for you. One more category of elites for you. This one tickles me pink. The pharmaceutical folks. The Mercks, the Pfizers, the AstraZenecas, whatever the heck you call them. The Modernas. Oh, we're really supposed to trust them. Yep, they're going to give us a vaccine. They're going to give us vaccines against the virus. That scary, evil virus that, of course, kills 0.5% of people that are 85, and that's about it. Well, we're going to get them to give us vaccines. The same people who produce all these medications and all these mind-altering medications and crap that got people driving like zombies on the road. There's that word again. We're going to look to them to solve this virus problem. Oh, don't forget, by the way, they're the ones that make all the birth control pills and IUDs that we as Catholics are supposed to be against. Well, we're going to ignore that part just for a little while because they're going to save us from the virus. And our clergy, who I just mentioned, they're all in on it. You've got to be kidding me. We're not in the ballpark. We're not in the neighborhood. We're not even in the zip code or the district right now. The same folks who make these chemical IUDs with abortifacients, we already know they're scumbags. We already know that they make all sorts of things that are against every Catholic teaching in the book. But, okay, they're the ones that are going to save us from this evil virus. Give me a break. This is so abominably stupid. Meanwhile, you've got so many people right now arguing in favor of possibly taking this virus because we got because we've allowed it to be framed as some sort of remote occasion of sin versus proximate occasion of sin thing. Because they've tricked us into looking at this from an abortion perspective with regards to what? 2 aborted fetuses from the 60s or 70s, whatever the heck it was. They've got us to look at that and only that, assuming they're even telling the truth on that. It's probably more. But we're focusing so far on that. Meanwhile, there's the man behind the curtain that we forgot is the one that makes all the birth control pills. As much as I've already said that we should be against the elites for all they do in terms of abortion, but sometimes there's even easier and more obvious reasons why we should have nothing to do with them. I'm very much ashamed of just how much we've fallen for this. I really wish we, as discerning and attentive Catholics, would see through this and put the kibosh on it. I know some of us have. Good, God bless. I tip my hat. But a lot of people haven't. They're still taking the blue pill, unfortunately. So I guess one of the big takeaways that I hope people get from this is that when we look at the folks who have power in America or around the world now, going back to the Enlightenment, I believe, there's been a big trade-off. People at the top have traded off any commitment to God that they ever had, which is, let's be honest, that's waxed and waned throughout history. Some elites were loyal to God, St. Louis the Ninth, for example. Some of them weren't. But there are no remaining vestiges of God anywhere near the upper echelons of society. And we cooperate with this insanity every time, we buy all the stuff that they're peddling. Every time, maybe we don't really deep down agree with what LeBron James is saying. But, we go and we spend $100, $200 to sit at courtside and watch him dribble the ball. Or the airlines treat us like crap, but we put up with it anyway. We spend $100 some odd on that as well. Even though, I don't know, has anybody seen how abusive they can be lately? Oh boy. Don't wear your face panties and they'll about near chew you out like you're a schoolboy. These are folks that are supposed to be doing a service to us. And whatever happened to the idea of civil servant? That used to be how they looked at it. Matter of fact, that was a big thing in France. Post-French Revolution, that was one of their big things. They had a strong reverence for civil servants. And not only the reverence for the particular civil servants, but the tasks that they did in serving the people. So Noblesse Oblige sort of, I guess, had maybe had a resurgence, but it was destined to fade because, again, when you're divorced from God, when you're divorced from the eternal Logos, everything goes to pot. And I think that's a big part of what's going on with our world. So us as Catholics, we're going to have to fix it, and it's going to mean prayer, it's going to mean penance. It's going to mean saying no to illegitimate authority figures, recognize and resist. All right, we got to recognize they're there. We can't put our head in the sand, but that doesn't mean we got to go along with it gleefully, guys. In the meantime, keep your head up. Don't lose faith. Pray 15 decades of rosary every day. If you still have access to the sacraments, frequent them. Go to Mass if you still can. I think, 8% of people are going now. Well, at least it's not too much worse than 20%, what it was before. So do all the right things. We'll discuss all the little stuff on some other episodes. Hopefully this didn't sound like too much of a rant. But that's what I got for you today. Noblesse Oblige is dead. Plan accordingly, guys. So thank you for listening to the show. If you enjoyed it, I need you to rate it, subscribe to it, beat up the like button. This goes different directions, so they're different on all the platforms. Buy my book, Caesar Vacantism, Rendering to Caesar, When Caesar Goes Nuts, on sales at Amazon. You can get it in Kindle and paperback. If people ask for it, I may make an audiobook out of it. Let me know. And that's a wrap. Cue the music.